Hey everybody, this is D and Mike, and this is the next cutscene for Rise of Tiamat. We're near the end of Rise of Tiamat, so things are coming to a culmination, and things are starting to shut down, and the cult is starting to make their final moves. And this one's called the Prison Ships of the Thay, and basically it's just these large airships that are going around, that have actually been going around for a long time, but are just now being alluded to and talked about. And they land in any particular city or village or town, whatever it is, that's been overtaken by the cult, and they take all the survivors and put them into the prison ships, into cells, like anti-magic cells and whatnot, and bring them to the temple's location for a mass sacrifice. So this cutscene just covers that just briefly. It's only like 5 minutes long, and it just shows them collecting people at this one particular village, and to kind of foreshadow and lay down some exposition that, hey, the ritual now is beginning. They have enough sacrifice. They have enough wealth. It is time to bring Tiamat into the world. So this was just to help push that narrative along a little bit. Also, I'm going to call him Drew Barrymore. It's Drowmore Borngray. The elf has also returned. He hasn't been back in my campaign since Sword of the Dragon Queen Chapter 6 in the castle. So now he's, in line with the forces as well, and he's there on the scene and whatnot. And I also introduced the fairies at the end who are kind of scouting this out. They're starting to show up in great numbers as well. So guys, hope you enjoyed. I'll put some images up for you. And yeah, I forgot what I called this one. I called it just the prison ships of the Thay. All right, enjoy.
The enormous vessel sailing through the sky casts its dreaded shadow on a burning city. The people, gathered in groups, surrounded by beastly guards, look up as the massive machination slowly descends, anchoring to the burned and scarred landscape. Giant ramps swing open, slamming to the ground. Reptilian guards immediately stepping out and shouting at the imprisoned masses.
Let's go! Everybody in! Bring in the
The enslaved are prodded towards the ship's open maw, engorging its iron cells. A red wizard steps forward, alongside an elf who smoothly pours himself a small shot of elven whiskey.
To another victim.
The red wizard nearly raises an eyebrow at the gesture, and turns to face the hordes of prisoners stumbling and fighting their way onto the ramps. Any resistance is met with swift justice, either by carefully crafted threats or the swinging of a bloodied axe.
Yes, though not without considerable losses.
The armies performed well, considering they had to take a majority of the enemy captive. Had a dragon been involved, they would have been far more dead by the collateral damage. It would have been far too difficult to control.
A messenger arrives on horseback and hands a scroll to the red wizard.
Message from the front lines.
The wizard takes the scroll and deactivates the jewel seal with his staff and quickly opens it. Once finished, a word is spoken, and the parchment bursts into flames and disintegrates.
Through. Everyone is to board this ship and begin the evacuation. Once these prisoners are stowed, we leave immediately for the temple. Bad news? Quite the contrary. Enough treasure and flesh has been acquired to commence with the final stages. All red wizards are instructed to return immediately. Time for the ceremony has begun.
Several soldiers approach the elf and the wizard, with 3 prisoners chained and gagged. 2 males and 1 female with long black hair.
That's far enough. My lords, we have captured the commanders of the resistance.
Who are they? I'm not sure about the humans. But the elf is none other than King Melindrak himself. Who are the others?
The paladin is Sir Estival, commanding the cavalry forces. The other...
The wizard steps forward, staring into the eyes of the woman.
Grey Witch. You have meddled in our affairs for the past 5 years. And now, it seems you finally made a mistake. They must be getting desperate if they're handing over forces to hags such as this. You misspeak. This one is a fair prize indeed.
Many of the wizards will be happy to extract information from this strumpet of the Underdark. And when we're finished, she will make an excellent sacrifice.
The woman merely stares at the wizard with cold, calculating eyes. The wizard breaks contact first, turning to the orc soldiers.
Put them in with the others and keep them gagged. The anti-magic cells should provide enough protection. Instruct the airship captains they are to take off immediately once their slave pens are full. Any remaining prisoners will be chained and executed here.
Yes, my lord.
The wizard and the elf walk away towards a massive airship, several guards falling in behind them. From the wreckage of the city, several prison ships lift off, their cells sufficiently overflowing. They enter the ship as several other battalions begin to round up the last remaining citizens. From a rocky crag overlooking the city, a small group of sprites watch the final evacuation. They turn to each other, and after a brief conversation, two of the sprites head off like a bolt of lightning into the direction of Waterloo. The remaining two watch as the last few prisoners are pushed onto the vessels. One sprite turns to the other.
I think I have an idea. Oh, no. Now you listen here. I'm not risking my neck just for anyone. If it was Althea down there, I'd be there before she could sneeze. But are we going to jeopardize our presence over a witch? If she fights against the cult, she's an ally. Plus, don't forget that shiny one down there. He seems rather important too. Nice hair, hard to find these days. Now tighten your belt and your armor. We're going in. Fine. But if I die because of this, you are in big trouble.
The other, squinting his eyes, turns to face the city as another airship takes off in the distance. With a simple nod, they make their way down into the chaos.
So there you have it, folks. Pretty straightforward. I kind of felt a little iffy about the end there because using that high-pitched voice, I only kind of do that in my comedy campaigns, my D&D comedy campaigns, which usually have halflings and gnomes, and they're running around like Scooby-Doo adventures doing crazy stuff. I only usually reserve it for that. I've always felt like I tried to do some kind of weird Thay voice. It's always going to come off a little comical, and that's okay. I played it for the comedy a little bit. I was really debating whether or not to cut that out because it does feel a little weird juxtaposition. But those Thay, Snip and Pip, they're both kind of a little goofy, so it made sense. So I just let it go, just let it play the way it was going to play. But anyway, guys, you can see here are the elements of foreshadowing, laying down the seeds of exposition, trying to set things up for the big thing that the big payoff of all this, in probably the next couple of weeks for us. As Tiamat comes closer to possibly re-entering the world. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. I'll see you in the next one.